Everyone has a story, and ours is the tale of wood. You see, we are Kotka Mills, a Finnish forest products company. We also have a vision of creating sustainability through innovation. Our solutions are the future.
Today's subject is the closing the loop, value chain and collaboration, cooperation, how we can different kind of stakeholders can influence and how we can build up the cooperation and value chain. Everybody knows that ocean plastic, marine plastic is a huge problem, no doubt about that. But I can see, of course, I'm a for-profit entrepreneur and a business people. I see that there is a huge demand of the cooperation between NGOs, government, suppliers, end users, public, everybody, that we can tackle this problem. Nobody can do it by themselves. And I will add direct question all of you, and after that we can discuss if we can find together the answer or solution for this. So Giulio, can we start with you?
Of course.
I have read a lot about Econil and your products and your company, and amazing job you have already done. And there's a greenhouse reduction is more than 80%. And can you tell a bit about that?
Well, thank you, Marco. First of all, a very good news, because our last audit that was dated during the lockdown reached a minus 90%. Where is this 90% coming from? The biggest amount is coming from actual reduction in energy and emissions. That is, let's say, coherent with the fact that we are just going back one step instead of drilling oil and then going 12 different steps before returning to our molecule, which is nylon 6. 1 against 12, it's easy to understand. Then there is also another part, which is already part of our job and life, to use only renewable energy when available, even in countries like China, Thailand, but maybe the most difficult one today is United States, that sometimes is not so easy to find. So at the end, we reached this incredible minus 90%, which is a great achievement. But if I have also to speak about the total company, since we started to measure this parameter since 2007, actually, when we published our first sustainability report, we reached an amazing minus 72%. Overall. We are approaching now, how can I say, a difficult corner where clearly we are just dependent on transportation, packaging, and still some small things that we can improve in our system. And this will be the next actions that we will have to try to make and, of course, to achieve.
Okay, excellent. Congratulations for your achievements. And how it's certified, or in AQUAFIL point of view, which are the marine plastic or materials what you can use?
When we deal with marine plastics, for us, the biggest part is related to fishing nets. And when I speak of fishing nets, I count approximately for 25% of our total waste collection, which is quite huge because I mean, today our Econil production capacity is exceeding 40,000 tons per year. Where are these fishing nets coming from? Well, most of them are coming from aquaculture because of logistical reasons. It is clearly easy to understand that it's easier to go to Norway and approach the salmon fish farming industry rather than going to small fishermen at the end of the world. Nevertheless, we are also taking back nets from other sources when available, including usage of NGOs or, say, communication tools in order to create awareness. Of course, you can divert from the oceans hundreds of tons through divers. You cannot divert from the oceans thousands of tons, because you would need a squad of divers of several thousand of people. But nevertheless, this is very important. Certification, I mean, this is a good point, the one that you have touched, because we are getting at a cornerstone, in my opinion, when apparently everybody is green, everybody is circular, everybody is doing great things for the oceans and for the environment. But actually, if we look at the global emissions, this is not happening. So we are, of course, dealing with certifications since ages. We are, of course, an audited company because we are a listed company. So we are, let's say, we have gone public to the Milano Stock Exchange market, but we are also working with GRS through the Control Union certification. We are working with the Norske Veritas, with the Bureau Veritas when we deal with EPDs and other stuff, with Cradle to Cradle, with UL, and even with BUMPO, which is the Sustainable Management Promotion Organization releasing the EcoLeaf certification. In Europe and US, we live with LEED when we deal with buildings and construction. In Japan, where Akiko is coming from, you have to, of course, to respect local people. I mean, being an ingredient manufacturer, we have been confronted with several certifications, and we find some of them useful, some other a little bit useless or even tricky and misleading. But nevertheless, the best way is always to welcome our customers or NGOs to visit us when they want to come and see if what we are saying is also corresponding to what we are doing.
Yes, good, because I think the certification is a issue that all the panelists can say something. I think Cyril and Kian and Akiko want to say something about the certification. So, Cyril, can you start?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, congratulations, Giulio, for what you have done. I think honestly that we have a high respect for your entity and for your production. And there are not a lot of people out there, actually, I don't know anyone that is recycling nylon on that level, on a chemical recycling level that you are doing. And I think that is the big challenge for the industry, is to let go of the idea that recycled material is not as good as virgin. I think we have to actually say it is always better because it has a better footprint. And the truth is that when you're looking at materials that we are finding, we are operating now in 33 countries in the world, and we have a partnership with World Bank that we announced in June 8, where we are delivering an end-to-end solution to roll out across pretty much every country with a coastline. And our idea is that you're cutting down the transportation and yet you're processing on site, which is not difficult with PET, plastic bottles, HDPE and PP. It's very difficult though with nylon 6, because you have to have a very good cleaning process, a preparation process, if you are going into manual, but even if you're going into chemical recycling. If you don't clean your materials, then you have to more or less rely on sources like in this case with AQUAFIL ECONYL, the salmon industry, because you get a certain quality coming in, and the carpets because you have a total clearance, like a total clear view on the qualities. But the fact is that out there are materials that need recycling in the hundreds of thousands of tons that are not meeting these standards. So we are at Palais thinking that you have to deploy miniature factories pretty much all over the world. You have to cut down and you have to process on site. And you have to bring business to these locations, to Sri Lanka, to Maldives, Thailand. And you want to do that on the ground, and you want to build capacity. Because recycling moving forward, and I would say ECONYL and also Palais, we have benefited of it being premium, it being luxurious, it being top level. But I think the next big challenge is how can we make it big? How can we allow that every single country out there has the capacity, the infrastructure to kind of turn their own waste into premium raw material? And how can we standardize it on a level that these materials can also land in global supply chains on a total same level? And I don't see these certifications. I don't see a certification right now that allows me right away to connect knowledge around a material that I find, that connects that with my processing later on. We are right now still in these justifications. We have to justify that a material is good. We have to justify, but I think this time is over. Right now we need to know. I want to know when I receive a material in, I want to know what it is, where it's coming from, where it's going towards. And that's why we are introducing at Palais something new, and it's called Palais ID. And it's a little chemical marker. It's a ceramic powder that we're adding into materials. So you can read it out with a handheld device and you can identify, even if there's no label attached anymore, you need to be able to identify where these materials are coming from and what additives are in there without big lab research. And then you can be able to process it accordingly. And I believe that with recycling, that is really coming from a niche market, from an often very unlucrative business model. We have to kind of make it a standard technology that is represented worldwide and everywhere, and that follows standardized codes. And yes, certifications are important for that, but I'm not so excited and not so happy about what we have today.
Okay, thanks. I agree the whole story what you said, and we have the same issues when we are collecting the waste. So
yeah.
But I have read in the internet, Kian, that your company also have received a certificate. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Sure. The one that you read about, it's the ocean-bound plastic certification by Zero Plastic Ocean, and it was actually audited by Control Union as well and witnessed by WWF Singapore and Malaysia. I'll tell a little bit of how I started the recycling journey. So I started because I was born in a recycler's family. So parents were collecting recyclables from household to household at the age of 10. Growing up, my parents always asked two things from all four siblings. Number one, get a degree, any degree, get a degree in pen, doesn't matter. But number two, never become a recycler. And I think that's because it's associated with shame. My parents always feel very shameful being recyclers. Fast forward that, today we work our way up from scavengers to become that mobile pickers, then yacht owner, processor, finally sitting on top to become the aggregator. We are one of the two largest metal scrap and paper scrap supplier to local paper mills and steel mills. I started in year 2002, basically try to build the economy of scope and scale in plastic. So today we are working with 28,000 independent grassroots collectors. So these are the entire pyramid, the entire informal community. We are working with 28,000 of them. So we are trying to basically show, more like a case study, if you will, to showcase a solution from Southeast Asia by connecting the informal community. Now, most of you would know that the entire plastic recycling landscape in Malaysia or in many Southeast Asian countries are highly fragmented. And because of that efficiency, it's a key challenge, whether it's from a labor point of view or logistic point of view. And most importantly, it is standard, as what Cyril has mentioned. So what we have done is that we actually share our internal standard to become the de facto industrial standard so that everybody follow that playbook, if you will, to prepare and process and sort the plastic material. So we are able to convert that mixed plastic scrap, the notorious mixed plastic scrap, to become a raw material with certain integrity. And with that consistency of the raw material, we can then do a base material preparation so that we can continue to upcycle our product to customize our material for premium application. So with more than 700 formulation as of now, exporting our material to 33 different countries. But what has gotten more interesting and exciting is that we spotted a trend, about 3 years ago, whereby oil prices are coming down, and at the same time, we're seeing big producer putting a lot more money into commissioning $1 billion or $100 billion of asset to make cheaper plastic. And then at the same time, we're confronted with plastic pollution and marine pollution. So we sat around and tried to come out with an MVP that will actually help us to address this. And the answer is ocean-bound plastic material. So we decided to go into ocean-bound plastic material. And at the same time, we simplify and distill the circular economy to our version of circular economy, which we call it a 5C model. So we think that the 5C that will clearly make a big difference will be, the 5C basically is collect, convert, co-create, champion, and conscientious consumer. So what we do in an actual fact is that we mobilize collectors to collect all this plastic material. We convert it into a very high spec material, fulfilling all the standard that Giulio just mentioned about GRS, CDEX, and all that. And then after that, we work with award-winning designer to design these award-winning chairs, work with the second largest furniture supplier to the fast food restaurant and hotel and school. And finally, we send it to schools, and we piece together the entire, because of our integration, we piece together the entire traceability. And from that traceability, we are able to feature the sustainability impact. We measure the social and environmental impact, so that the product the end product come with a QR code that shares the entire chain of custody. So that's something that we are doing, and coincidentally, when Zero Plastic Ocean share with us the entire ocean-bound plastic framework, it is very much the same as the framework that we have actually built internally to control the whole chain of custody. So that is, a short version of our case from Malaysia. So that's what we can bring to the table. Back to you, Marko.
Okay, thanks, Kian. I'm so happy to hear that there is something happening in Southeast Asia, in my neighborhood. So, and now we have Akiko. How about Japan? How you can see in ITOCHU cooperation? What is the situation?
Hi, everybody. That is really nice to meet you all. Thank you for organizing this tonight's event, Marko-san. And I'm the ITOCHU Corporation. We were ITOCHU Corporation. Maybe that's the first time to explain about our company. We were the biggest trading and investment company in Japan. We have all over the world at more than 100 offices in the world. And our business is so diverse. So we cover every industry, like, of course, chemical things, and the energy sector, and the textile, and the food, finance, fintech, everything. And especially that is the fashion field, textile field, we were the leader in Japan. And also food sector, we were the leader. And also regarding the plastic material, we were the secondary biggest trader in the world. So in that means that we have a responsibility, we feel responsibility we have to change the world in a better way, So our mission is to, of course, to how to, push the Japanese people to think about the sustainability SDGs business. As you may know, that in Japanese market is that we were still very slow, and maybe somehow behind in the European companies are always a leader, and the Japanese people is still that we were thinking, taking the time, and we believe that some people believe that still that sustainability business is just cost, but in ITOCHU, every single company division, we were trying to create a new business regarding the SDGs business. And for example, we were now trying to connect the whole fish cooperation association in Japan. You know, Japan is just isolated in the surrounded by the sea. Fish industry is very important. We collect all the fish net in Japan from the fishers, the people, and we recreate, recycle into the new material. We were now just, this is how to say, labo sample procedure. It's not yet, commercialized like AQUAFIL. But we were, for example, trying to do with also Finland company, the so-called Metsä Group, which is the biggest forest company. We were now trying to make a new material made by the forest, for example. And we do with China company is not a recycled material from the plastic bottle, but we do purely 100% recycled by the textile stock, which is I think is at this moment is the only factory in the world. I was former director of the Fashion Week Tokyo for the more than 10 years. That's why I understand that fashion is easily drive the people and influence the people. So I think it's the new material and new things is collaborating with the fashion people is really essential and very important. And regarding this topic is the certificate. This is very sensitive concept thema in Japan, because Japanese people are so careful. They are totally so careful, so they are so afraid. So if we create some regulation very severely, people don't touch, don't want. So I'm now discussing with Japanese government, environmental government ministry, that we were trying to promote the company, and is regulation is we have to create some regulation, very rough regulation together with Japanese government. And we just try to pick up the only good things. If the Japanese company realized good things for the sustainability rules, so we price like that. The first we created the rules, many rules severely. Then for the Japanese companies cannot accept, because they should be the perfect. Japanese people, if we are perfectly achieved, we don't go, So very careful. So it's very different from the European and the other country, maybe.
The Germans are very similar to Japanese there.
Yes. Hey, can I welcome now Professor Tim van Emmerik, as the professor of Wageningen University, and I think Tim have something to say about the scientific point of view, and we have discussed with Tim quite a lot of time, and we agree that there is a lack of data, there is a lack of knowledge, and Tim has published fresh paper from the Philippines some days or some weeks ago. Tim, welcome. Stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. Thanks for the invitation, and welcome to all, or nice to all meet you virtually. First of all, it's not professor yet, it's assistant professor, and I think in Europe we tend to just stick to the doctor, but it's fine for me. In the Anglo-Saxon world, it might be different. Anyway, my name is Tim van Emmerik. Indeed, I'm an assistant professor at Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands, and at Wageningen we focus on developing monitoring tools, monitoring methods to measure, detect, and quantify plastic pollution in river systems, to identify sources, sinks, and also identify the pathways of how plastics move through the natural environment, with a specific focus on rivers. Now, also together with stakeholders, we try to discuss how these specific techniques and sensing methods can be implemented in longer-term monitoring strategies And of course, as scientists, we also try to learn from the data that are being collected all over the world. Now, one of the reasons why we do this is because I strongly believe that that there's no silver bullet in tackling global plastic pollution. There's no single thing that we can do to make it all disappear. But it doesn't really matter what you want to do, and even though we have to change all these different things along the whole chain, there's one thing that everything has in common, and it is the absolute necessity for data and observations. Because without any data, we will not be able to verify or quantify the effectiveness or efficacy of any chosen solution. Whether it's policy oriented, whether it's cleaning plastics from rivers or the ocean, if there's no observations, if there's no data, we can never show that a certain measure has a certain effect. And I hope that's very clear, and that's sort of what we try to contribute to. Yeah, going back to Marko, what you told about the paper we recently published.
Yeah, about the Philippines, because it's also close to my heart as well, because we are starting the project in Philippines as well, and you have contributed a new paper. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that. Well, let me first start with the fact that the research that we do and the monitoring methods that we develop, we try to do this with a global perspective. Because if we talk about plastic pollution, there's not such a thing as developed or less developed countries. Plastic pollution is a problem anywhere where you go. We've been collecting data in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in the US, in Thailand, in Indonesia, well, and many more places. And there's not a place that is clean. There's not a place that is not being affected by plastics in the environment, and specifically not in rivers. So we actually published a really nice study last week about plastic pollution in the Dutch part of the Rhine-Meuse Delta, that really emphasizes the fact that this is a global issue, and that even here in Wageningen, we are located along the Rhine. It's everywhere. On average, we have about 2,000 macroplastic items per kilometer river bank. Now, that's really, I would say, the lack of data makes it difficult to compare this with other countries, but this is a lot, and it's there along the whole river, from the border with Belgium and Germany all the way to the river mouth. Papers that you're referring to is in the line of trying to collect data for the first time in urban environments. I mean, we can focus on the plastic soup on the ocean, and it's really great that there's so much research being done out there. But we know it comes from the places where the people live, right? The interesting fact is, though, that the closer you go to the source, the less we know about it, the less research is available. If we look at the whole available research and studies on plastic pollution in the environment, the vast majority is on the oceans. And if we look at studies that focus on the terrestrial and river plastic pollution, the majority focuses on microplastics, the very, very small items that are potentially very dangerous, but we actually have no clues or we have no tangible evidence about the actual effect it has on the environment. Whereas if we talk about plastic waste, macroplastics, plastic debris, everything larger than, let's say, half a centimeter, we know that this has such a clear negative impact on the environment, but also on people, right? So these are the plastics that kill all the aquatic species and cause all the disrupting images about dead whales and turtles and crocodiles and whatever. But plastic pollution, these types of plastics also cause, for example, blockage in urban water systems, leading to additional flood risk in areas that might already be prone to floodings. So this is also part of our research. We try to go back to the source and look at how plastics actually leak into the environment and how they travel through the urban water systems into, for example, river systems, and how then from these river systems they go through the estuaries into the oceans. So some research that we've been doing is in specific urban water systems like the Philippines, but also in Jakarta, in Kuala Lumpur, in Dutch cities as well. So we have a recent study about the urban canals in Leiden. But the interesting thing about the study that Marko referred to on the Philippines study is that unfortunately the plastics that we measured there was, I would say, the largest quantity of plastics that we ever measured to date. So we were talking about tens of thousands of plastic items. Yeah, so it's not microplastic. These are actual things that you can see from bridges. Tens of thousands plastic items flowing through this river per hour. You can probably do the math, but you can sort of see what that leads up to on an annual scale. But the worrying thing in this case is that cities like Manila in this case, likewise for other urban areas close to the coastlines, especially during periods of low precipitation, low freshwater discharge from the rivers, that leads to these rivers facing or experiences bidirectional flow because of the tide. If there's no freshwater sort of pushing all the plastics out into the ocean, and the flow in the river is basically determined by the tidal dynamics on the open ocean, we see that these plastics are not sort of simply flowing from land into the river into the ocean, but they're just traveling back and forth all day long, hours and hours and hours and days in order. And it means that these river mouths, that they become these at least temporary sinks of plastic pollution. And it just stays there, and it causes so much additional health hazards for people, for flora and fauna, for the water system itself, clogging urban infrastructure, etc. And it's basically sort of waiting for the wet season to start, and then at once all these plastics are being flushed out into the system. And the results are horrible. That's what you see in the Manila Bay. That's what you see in the ocean. These gigantic plumes of plastics that are all of a sudden potentially flushed out of the system. So that's, knowing how these systems work and knowing how these plastics move through the system is also crucial to understand where they come from, but also what we can do about it. Not only in terms of cleaning. And so maybe these river mouths, because they are such natural sort of sinks of plastics, at least temporarily, these might actually be very smart ways or strategic ways to collect plastics from rivers. But of course, you want to prevent the plastics entering the river at the first place, right? That's also something that we look at. So we're not only trying to relate plastic movement and plastic transport and observing plastic transport through the river system, but we also try to say something about the type of plastic that we find in specific river systems. So what kind of items do we find? What kind of polymer types do we find? And the interesting thing is that if you compare those, if you compare the plastics that you find in different river systems, it is completely different depending where you go to. So if we look at the plastic that you find in, for example, the Jakarta rivers, it's basically one-to-one the same as typical household waste. So a lot of food packaging, a lot of complete whole items, a lot of bags, basically suggesting that, well, sure, you can maybe clean it up from these rivers, but maybe the smarter way is optimizing the waste infrastructure in the first place, just because it's just directly dumped into these river systems, apparently. If we compare it to the composition of plastics in, let's say, Vietnam, one of the other areas where we do a lot of research, you see that the plastic composition is already quite different. You see that the most abundant plastic type in these Vietnam rivers is mainly these foamy plastics that are easily transported by, for example, wind or by surface runoff, suggesting that even in places where you have pretty okay waste infrastructure, that because of the hydrometeorological conditions and events, still a specific part of these plastics end up in the river systems. Again, if we compare this to plastics that we find in the Netherlands, and also other rivers in Europe, we find that most plastics that we find are not really recognizable as items anymore. So the recent study that we published, for that study we analyzed over 150,000 collected microplastic items in the river Meuse Delta, and the vast majority of these items consists of fragments. So just small pieces of hard and soft plastic items that were not identifiable as specific items anymore. And that tells us actually two things. First thing is that it's very difficult to identify the sources of these plastics. But secondly, that these plastics are probably in the system for a very long time already because they had the time to fragment and disintegrate. And it also means that even, or I think that also implies that even if it would stop producing and polluting plastics today, there's still so much plastics leaked into the environment, just waited to be transported from land into the river and from river into the ocean. And that will probably mean that we need to find smart ways to find these plastics and also find a way to reduce them from the natural environment. Just two more examples, and now I'll give the floor back. If we look at how much plastics are, again, from Jakarta being exported into the ocean, we think it's about 2 million kilograms of plastics per year. If we compare this to the latest estimates of how much plastics are leaked into the environment, the export of plastics into the ocean, we think is about we think it's only 3% of the total amount of plastics leaked into the environment. That means that 97% of the plastics that are leaking into the environment remain somewhere on land, remain somewhere in the river, remain somewhere in the river mouth. So again, focusing on cleaning the ocean, cleaning at river mouths, it's a great idea, and it would be nice if we can do it in a cost-effective way. However, the majority of the plastic waste is somewhere else, is somewhere closer to the sources. So I think also that's where we should focus a little bit more on. Last example. One of my favorite examples, unfortunately, in the River Seine in France, there's a lot of work being done by the university in Paris. They've been looking at can we say something about the age of the plastics that we find. And what they show is that a lot of plastics that you find on the riverbanks, and these riverbanks in some places are really, they're full of plastics. But many of these plastics have been produced in the 70s. Already, which means that these plastics, they don't simply go to the ocean. No, they remain somewhere in the river system, even 50 years after their production date. So probably, again, even if we would stop polluting and producing plastics today, we'll probably have half a century to centuries to come to focus on finding these plastics and removing them as quickly as possible. So yeah, just to emphasize, we need the data, we need to measure, because otherwise we'll never be able to accurately stop or reduce plastic pollution in the environment, or determine the efficacy of any solution that we might think of. Back to you, Marko.
Okay, thanks, Tim. That was full of knowledge and this kind of things. What I agree as well. And we are Clewat, like as a company, we have developed this vessel which can collect in amounts of plastic waste, macro and micro, but we have also developed RiverFill, what we can use in the rivers, and it uses renewable energy or natural flow of the river, so we don't need to have a vessels, and it's more sustainable, more cheaper solution for the cities in Asia, example. But I think Cyril and Kian, you know also quite a lot of this kind of river plastic and ocean plastic. Can you, or do you want to comment?
Would
Cyril
love to.
can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the project we're doing, the project we're doing with World Bank is called Clean Rivers and Seas, and it pretty much covers the areas that Palais is focusing on. I mean, first of all, I don't believe it will ever clean up the plastic mess. That's a total illusion. And I agree with Tim that the material is hiding in spaces and places that we are not even aware of. And I'm happy that research has been done to identify that. The truth is that we at Palais don't believe that the only solution for the plastic crisis is interception, is recycling. We don't believe in that. We think that's a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid. The true solution is in ending this material. It's a design flaw. This material needs to go. You know, it comes from a time where we were so excited that we could make things, and then suddenly it got scaled up so fast that we were not starting to questioning it. But this is an old technology, and look at the factories, look at the whole process. This is Stone Age. We're living in 2020 and we're still talking about items that we can't control. And nature is so advanced, and you won't find packaging in nature that behaves that stupid, sorry to say it that way, as our own alien material that we create. Plastic is not ready for a circular economy because it's toxic. It leaches chemicals, it sheds microparticles, it gases off. But we have to start somewhere. And therefore at Palais, we believe that recycling has an important role to play. And in the last 8 years, we have helped to make it as sexy as it gets. We have put it into the center of fashion. We have put it into the heart of society through art. And we have created 100 billion eyeballs with campaigning. But the true objective is that people start changing their mind, that they're actually, when they're cleaning up a beach, when they're seeing how much effort it takes to take care of these materials, that they start questioning and they're like, oh my God, I actually carry it right now in my hand. I have a bottle in my hand. Should I even buy it? Should I consume it? I think our main objective at Palais is to break the trust in this material. And of course, when you're looking at cleaning it up, I mean, it's intense. You know, we are operating with 130,000 volunteers worldwide. And the amount of material that we're collecting is a joke. And Giulio, you just mentioned it before. Yes, you need thousands of divers to get the nets out. And these nets, they are even in advantage because nylon 6 and polypropylene lines, they resist for a while. They're not breaking it down so fast. So actually, when you find a net, then suddenly you already have 100 kilograms, a ton, or sometimes even more. We would
but Cyril, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Don't you believe that we have today the possibility to already start acting to solve a certain problem? So I understand all of that, and I fully agree with all what has been said so far. But I believe that today, and you know, I am the pioneer of measuring, you know, because I started to measure my emissions already something like 20 years ago, because the only way to reduce is, I agree with Tim. I mean, if you measure, then you have an idea. But I believe that today we have already some measurements, or let's say evidences, that for certain things we need to act, and there are already solutions. For example, for the fishing nets, just to speak about that, it would be easy to collect 100% of them all over the world. You make them all in nylon 6, and the next day you put bins in every port facility and you collect them, just as we are collecting glass. The point is, why we are not collecting all the fishing nets? Simply because the legislation is not forcing you, so we need a good legislation. Secondly, because sorting is killing this kind of recycling. So it's an apparent cost that we're putting on the shoulder of us, recycling nylon, because people want to use polypropylene, polyester, Dyneema, what is a high density polyethylene, because they believe that having a better material, they can resolve the problem. Yes, you create a new problem, which is worse than the previous one. It's easy. I mean, do you want to resolve the problem? Okay, we put deposit on the plastic bottles, and we do like Norway does, and 97% of the bottles are recycled. We start blocking usage of single-use plastics, prohibit shoppers, and we can also resolve some other things. We start telling consumers, please abandon the packaging by the shop. What I'm doing when I go buying, I go there with my shopper, so that nobody dares to give me one plastic or even paper bag. I have mine. Why? I mean, when you go to the supermarket, I'm sure that you go there with your shopper, don't you? Everybody does. So why don't we do the same when we go?
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. I think the problem is that people bounce back very fast in their habits the moment they have a reason to. And I think the truth is there are two ways of approaching that. And one, you're right, is intercepting and avoiding. Avoid and intercept. Avoid plastic and intercept plastic. Avoid means education.
In my opinion, reduce all what you can reduce. We're not speaking only
but it's
about
an
plastic.
educational
Let's
effort.
talk about food. Let's talk about stainless steel. Let's talk about whatever raw material. I mean, we need two planets to feed the current consumption appetite of the inhabitants of the planet. So it's not only a matter of plastic, it's a matter of everything, I believe. Plastics is a problem that, I mean, everybody is addressing, and I am totally, I mean, I'm a plastic producer who doesn't want to use plastics. So if you come to my home, you will find
Here's the thing,
plastics.
Giulio. If you want to end plastic, and I like the title of this whole conference, if you want to end plastic, you have to have a plastic-free world, then I think there are three angles we have to follow. One is to avoid, one is to intercept, and the third is to redesign the material. Avoid
and to use what? Cotton or wool?
Alternative plastics. I mean, the labs are full. The labs are full of new materials. There's coming new stuff. And
this I am afraid that we risk to have a problem which is bigger than the original one. I can mention Japanese legislation, for example. They prohibit the impregnation of the fishing net with copper-based anti-fouling, and they're using bitumen. Is it better bitumen or copper-based anti-fouling? So we have to be careful that the remedy must not be worse than the problem that we are trying to remedy.
I heard that
alternative plastics, in my opinion, if you invent a new molecule, you must substitute an old one, or better, two old ones, or you create a further problem that is worse than the original one.
Here we go. I just think the following. I heard that when the digital revolution happened, when the internet came, all the networks, all the television stations said, oh, the internet is dangerous. We can't do that. It's too dangerous. It will not create anything. Today, they're pretty much out of analog distribution of signal. And I think we are now talking material revolution. And it's hard to understand and it's hard to believe, but I believe and I know that we have to find new material standards, because the plastic we're using today is not helping. And this will take 20, 30 years. And it will be very important that we agree on standards that make sense. I agree with you on that. It's not good to jump on things, but to end the problem of plastic pollution will not happen just by education and by recycling. I don't believe in it.
Marko,
okay,
this is going to be a very fun panel for you to moderate, and I'm sure we will all promise to you we'll keep it spicy for you. All right. From recycling, I mean, let's just say fast forward 100 years from now. Yeah, 100 years from now, are we going to see plastic in our civilization? I believe that we will see plastic in our civilization, but there are several things that will change. Number one, the more than once situation. We will use plastic, but we don't use it as single-use plastic. Any plastic that's made, it's made to be used more than once. So it's not just so much of a product-centric for convenience anymore, but it is very much a life cycle-centric. The second thing is that I believe in above ground. So what I mean by that is that we will no longer depend on fossil-based plastic that we need to draw, basically extract more crude oil from underneath the ground. We have enough hydrocarbon above the ground, and then we can actually harness that and converting that to basically make new plastic again through chemical recycling. The third thing is that plastic will be in constant transformation. Now, we know that plastic is super robust, whether it is in solid form, liquid form, gaseous form, electricity, or whatnot. It goes around and it actually changes its shape from one to the other. It is only a problem when it stays stationary, it does not transform itself. That whenever it stays as a rigid problem, whenever it doesn't transform in shape, then it gives you problem. As long as it goes from solid, into diesel, into hydrocarbon and all that, it's not a problem for us. As a matter of fact, each time when it changes its shape, it actually churns out commercial value. So that's something that we see at this point of time. So and my take here is that I agree the part that we need to reduce in our use. I agree that we need to avoid. I agree that we need to come up with an alternative. And I also agree that recycling is going to be a big part, that consumer actually will play a very big role. Consumer nowadays are unlike before. Unlike consumer in the past, consumer yesterday talked about how can I get things better, faster, cheaper, prettier. That's it. Yeah. Consumer of tomorrow will basically ask the product that, do I really need plastic? Can I have any other way that is being presented to me? Now, if I think that plastic is the best, fine. Then I'm going to ask, where does this plastic come from? Above ground or below ground? And where does it going to go after I use that? I as a human being then is responsible for that. The statistic for Malaysia is that our plastic consumption is 17 kilograms, relatively small compared to developed country of more than 70 or 80 kilogram. So I'm actually telling, you know, my other Malaysian friends here that you are responsible to recycle 17 kilogram. That is how much you consume. So it is your job to make sure that it stays above ground, it's being transformed, you know, from one to the other. Now, recycling is challenging because it uses a lot of electricity, and which is why for us, our company, we do have our pyrolysis plant, whereby we convert 3% of those plastic that cannot be recycled mechanically, and then we basically power our own 1 megawatt renewable energy, and all generated from plastic. So for us, you know, what we are trying to showcase is that we can recycle 60,000 tons from that one small factory that we have, that it's entirely off-grid. I don't need water, I don't need utility, I can harvest rainwater, and I can do that all by juggling basically plastic scrap in the air, making sure that it's transforming from one shape to the other. And that's our take, that's our own translation from our side here. So back to you, Marko. It's going to be a fun panel, I can tell you that.
Yes, and actually that was what I was just looking for, because we have a different background and we have the same goal, the better planet, saving the seas. And I'm a strong believer that you have to do something now. And we have a huge experience in AQUAFIL and Mr. Giulio, who have already done something. And then there is something, you know, actions we can measure. Kian from Malaysia, ITOCHU from Japan, they are doing something. And we in Clewat, we have to clean it up and to find the way, the value chains that which are most economical, most sustainable ways. And that's why I believe that collaboration, cooperation is the only way. We have to listen to each other, and we have to go step by step, because nothing happens over the night.
But it has to be systematic. And I think there needs to be a master plan. And we are at Palais working for a 10-year master plan, like everybody at the UN and so on. So 2030, even if it's a fictional year and a fictional deadline, I just wasted 8 years with Palais. And I wasted because now I would do everything different than I did in the last 8 years. And yes, we have made tens of millions of products. We have collected whatever, how many millions of kilograms. But you know what? I'm not happy. And I'm not seeing that, even if with all the support we have now, and even to be very honest, with funding in a dimension that was never there, I know that cleaning up beaches and cleaning up rivers and cleaning up will not be enough. Of course, we have to do it. And we're doing it every single day. And yes, we have to change supply chains off and away from virgin plastic. Yes, and we need an AQUAFIL, ECONYL. We need all these different like brands that are moving in, some in premium, some in medium, and some in low. That's not the point. I just say, what is the long-term game? And when we're talking 100 years, I want out of the recycling business. I want out of collecting plastic. I hate plastic, to be honest. And I just hope and wish that there will be a material sometime that some smart people put their heads together and create something new that probably even runs on the same machines. But that is my ultimate hope. Is it real? No, because today it's not there. And yes, it's a total mess and it's a total chaos because everybody is doing something. Real today is to educate people to use less. Real costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, and real is to intercept. And there is this unreal piece that could end the problem for good. And that's the total fantasy, and that is inventing something new, because we are inventors. Somebody invented the stuff in the first place. And Giulio, you are an inventor. Otherwise, you wouldn't have these facilities in that brilliance. And we are creators, you know, so we have to kind of think crazy.
Oh,
you know?
but if I may, Marco, I believe that joining forces can for sure be helpful to faster transit from the recycling economy to the circular economy. Where I fully agree with all what we are saying, that recycling is not enough and is just a band-aid, as it was very well defined. Recycling is not enough. I don't know if I'm not entering specifically into the plastic problem, because I mean, then I risk, you know, lawsuit, because when someone is listening to me on a private dinner, for example, I am a little less educated than I am, you know, against a certain type of plastics, against big multinational companies that today, but I mean, this has been posted to my socials, are trying to cheat through mass balance and allocation, which is, in my opinion, insulting. You know, that is something that we must be careful, absolutely, to be aware that this is total cheating. You know, there is total management control and there is total cheating environment. You know, but I believe that recycling economy is a transition, and we need to go as fast as possible to circular economy, which is a place where waste doesn't exist. So, Cyril, I agree with you. I hate plastic waste, as I hate every kind of waste, you know, because at the end, what we need is to learn to live differently, like nature does. Biomimicry is for sure very much inspiring my life and my way of doing. And in the case of my action right now, eco-design is for sure representing the future if we want to create products that don't have an end. At the end, what we have to do is, you are totally right, yes, of course, to recycle materials, not only plastics, but every kind of material, of course, in an environmental friendly way, because there are some type of recycling that are for sure not cleaning, but unfortunately making our planet dirtier. But at the end, we must design products in a totally different way and learn to use them, maybe more sharing than owning, you know, which is another very important step.
I agree on that.
You know, even in the Japanese people now is we were trying to think about the future. We were ready now to try to, you know, to join your team that is try to make effort to change the future. You know, before that, the Japanese people, because too peaceful in a country, nobody think about the future, you know, because we wanted just to keep in the situation. But there's thanks for the COVID-19, you know, which was a big shock also to the Japanese people. Now we think about the future. So we were now changing, you know, in a very good way.
Something good is coming out of that.
Yeah, last, my take is this, because for the poor family under poverty, very likely that this family will be very, very close to all the dump site and where the unwanted things are. And I always think that to get out of poverty, education is definitely number one. And I'm trying to come up with a playbook that recycling is number two. So okay, that's my take.
And legislation, we need a powerful legislation. And then when we say that something is wrong, we have to prohibit it, you know.
100%.
If nylon is wrong, please prohibit. I will find another business.
Yes.
But
that's the point. Yes. Thank you, Giulia. This is Jakob Dur from the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. Welcome to join our panel.
Thank you.
Okay, we have asked our panelists the same type of questions, and our first question what I want to ask from you is, on the Alliance point of view, how you see the current situation, and are there visible improvements?
I mean, we have all read the numbers. 11 million tons of plastic waste are entering the environment on an annual basis. And if we don't act or take the right decisions today, that number will increase to 29 million by 2040, just in 20 years from now. So the problem is visible, and it requires urgent action and urgent attention. and urgent investment from all actors in order for us to find solutions going forward. But not only is plastic waste leaking into the environment, we also need to understand why it does. And one of the main reasons is very often due to lack of integrated waste management systems, in particular in developing countries. And the reality is that today, 3 billion people on this planet, they do not have access to waste collection. And that means the garbage, the waste that these households is generating, that automatically ends up in the environment. Not only plastic waste, but any waste. And that's in reality why the Alliance to End Plastic Waste was created. What can the industry, what can the private sector do in terms of developing new solutions and the solutions that are required, not only to prevent the leakage into the environment, but also contributing to ensuring that the value of the plastic waste that today is lost, which is estimated at between $80 and $120 billion on an annual basis, that value is brought back into the economy. So what we are doing at the level of the Alliance with our almost 50 member companies and a budget of $1 billion over the next 5 years is to invest in projects that focuses on infrastructure. And by infrastructure, we mean integrated waste management systems in communities. We mean recycling, but we also invest in innovation, recognizing that the technology that we have in place today, in particular around recycling and in particular around advanced recycling, is simply not at a level or at a size and at a scale to address and deal with the amount of plastic waste that the communities around the world is generating. But even with the best systems in place, we also need people. And that's why our fourth focus, or our third focus, is on education and engagement. We need to engage with citizens to understand the important role that all of us can play in terms of waste management, and understanding also that waste contains a value, including plastic waste. And our fourth strategic pillar is on clean up. We have all seen the plastic and the waste sitting in the environment, and we believe that working with partners, we can contribute to not only preventing the leakage, which is the long-term solution, but also taking out the plastic waste that sits in the environment already and bring it either to landfills or to incineration or into a circular economy. We are young as an alliance, and that means we're only 18 months old actually, but we're already up and running. And over the last 18 months, we have developed and started the implementation of 15 projects in different parts of the world, in particular here in Southeast Asia, and in particular in countries where there is a significant leakage of plastic waste into the environment. And one of the projects that we're already seeing some very early learnings from is a project in Jembrana in Bali, where we are working in a small community with 150,000 inhabitants to put in place a waste collection and waste sorting system. And it's really working with the local households in providing garbage bins at the household level, working with the community in understanding how sorting needs to happen at the household level, making sure that the waste is being collected and brought to a more centralized space, and furthermore supporting more centralized sorting so that the value, and particularly what we call hard to recycle plastic, can be brought to recycling facilities. So we are quite confident going forward that with the right investments, with the right partnerships, and with working with local governments, that we over the next years can make a significant impact on preventing plastic waste from leaking into the environment.
Thank you, Jacob. I think this is like a nutshell what we are looking for today. It's a collaboration is the key. With the other panelists, I emphasize that we have to act today, we have to do something, we have to step to the future. We have to collect the real numbers, the size of the problem. And I think this is a good way, and we have gained a lot of knowledge today and a lot of experience with different stakeholders. And that's forward me to the next question, that how you see the collaboration between the different stakeholders. You already mentioned the governments and the companies. And
I mean, collaboration is absolutely key. I mean, no one can do this alone. No single citizen, no community, no city, no country, no organization it's really only if we are joining forces across all the different stakeholder groups that we can make a real difference. What we find interesting and unique about the alliance is that I think for the first time we're actually bringing the private sector together across the entire value chain. So the alliance is composed of member companies and supported by member companies that represents the chemicals and petrochemicals industry, the plastic producers. But we also have strong membership and participation from some of the biggest brands and retailers in the world, from converters and waste management companies. And in reality is when we sit down and develop the new solutions and develop holistic solutions, we have all those actors as part of the project development process. And for the first time, really, we are talking about solutions that are not only addressing the specific interest of one sector, but solutions that involves and integrates the viewpoints and the capacity and the know-how and knowledge of all the sectors. And we see, I think, also in this area that the private sector is taking on a very strong leadership role, but also the private sector cannot do it alone. And therefore, for us, it's very important to work with national governments, to work with local governments and municipalities, but we also need to work with civil society organizations. We need to work with academia, and ultimately we need to work with the citizens. And we believe that if we are joining the resources and the forces and the capacities of all these different stakeholders, then we can bring change and we can make a real difference. One stakeholder group that I've not mentioned is financial institutions and the broader finance community, because any solution that we are to develop requires significant resources. While we at the Alliance are operating with what we believe is a relatively large budget of $1 billion with a target of $1.5 billion over the next 5 years, we do understand that this is a challenge that requires significantly larger investments. So what we want to do as an alliance, we want to develop and deploy and de-risk the solutions, but then we also want to work with the development banks. And here in this region, the Asian Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, but equally much with venture capital and private equity. What we see is that resources are there and commitment is there. Solutions are lacking. And where we at the Alliance can bring added values to develop the solutions, but also to connect and serve as the convening platform for the different actors between where the need is at the local and national level and where the resources are. And if we can have resources, solutions, and need combined into one, then we believe again that we can make a real difference and a real change at scale.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. Strongly agree. That's what we are also in our company are looking for, that the collaboration between the universities, the governments, and what we see that one of the most important things that what we are cleaning or collecting from the rivers and the sea, you have to find create a value chain, and it's all have to be profitable of the stakeholders. That's the way that we can raise the awareness and that people want to join, the companies want to join, the government want to join this huge task together. And yes, please.
No, I fully agree with you. And I think there are so many actors out there that are committed to this challenge and want to take it on. So we at the Alliance have already, through our partners or through our projects, established a number of important partnerships. We are working with different UN agencies. We are working with civil society organizations at the local level in serving as our executing partners in taking our projects further. But as you also said, the importance of data. So we are also working with academia and with universities, because we need to have a good understanding and we need to have a clear understanding of the data around plastic leakage into the environment. And we need to understand very clearly where are the hotspots. And it's with that knowledge we can make sure that the projects and the interventions that we are developing and investing in are in the right areas, are in the right communities, so that we have a maximum impact.
Yes, that's exactly what we're thinking about also. And the final question, I want to ask your message to the governments and the stakeholders.
I think our message is a call for action. We have been encouraged by the commitments that we have seen by governments, by civil society organizations, and the private sector, that by 2025 or 2030, they have set really ambitious targets for where they want to be in terms of their plastic usage, in terms of reuse and recycling of plastic. But what we need to do is to move from commitment to real action and real change on the ground. So our call to all the stakeholders and actors out there, thank you for your commitments. Now we are moving into the next stage, and that is action. And it's only through action that we can make a difference.
Okay, thank you, Jacob.